Hello again, Michael Ware with the Iowa Firearms Coalition. We have with us today Chris Tymeson from the Safari Club International. Welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. This has been a long time coming.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll start with a little story and we'll jump right into it here. A few years ago, I think maybe it's been 3.5 years, my daughter and I were coming back from Missouri back to Iowa where we live, because our family farms are in Northwest Missouri, and we go down there every year for the annual deer hunt, right? And my daughter had gone out in the stand, but never carried a weapon for 6 years in a row. She finally begged me long enough to teach her how to do this, which was part of the plan. I kind of watered her to want it, you know what I mean? And so I taught her how to shoot and built her a rifle, and she ran right out and had all kinds of great success, and I was so tickled for that. But anyway, on one of our treks back, we were in the car together, truck together, and we were visiting. And I said, you've been part of, you're a member of about every Second Amendment organization there is, whether you know it or not, because when you're a baby, I ran right out and bought you life memberships and everything. But I said, as I recall, I said, you and I have never delved specifically into advocacy for hunters. And I said, and there are some really good organizations I think we should consider and get involved. And she said, like what? And I said, well, the first one that comes to mind is Safari Club International. So I said, hop on your phone. And she had a smartphone, just got it at that time. And I said, look through it. And she said, this looks great. So we both became members, right then. And we have been ever since and participated a little bit locally. I wasn't able to go this year. She went to the Iowa chapter Safari Club banquet there near Des Moines. She had a really nice time. And we've gone a couple of times to the members meetings and been part of that. And it's been tremendous. So I set all that up to say, we haven't had a lot of hunting organizations or advocates on our show to talk with us about these things. And I really, really wanted to have Safari Club on. So with that said, why don't you hop right in and let everybody know who doesn't know what Safari Club is all about, and we'll start the conversation. Hit it, Chris.
Sure. Safari Club International, don't let the name fool you. We have advocates in all 50 states. We got 170 chapters worldwide, plus 170. Essentially, what the NRA is to guns, we are to hunting. That's just an easy way to say it for things. We advocate for the freedom to hunt and for sustainable use conservation. We got about 50,000 members worldwide. We got about 100,000 advocates in our alert system, and great organization to belong to. Our website, you can get involved, go join safariclub.org.
safariclub.org. We've got that pulled up here. Okay, so as I scroll down through here, we're talking about abilities to protect hunting, key issues that I see on here. You've got methods to get involved and how you do these things, where your events are, what's going on and when, about you, and then beyond the U.S. And it's interesting to see how we're talking about an organization here that is international. That's pretty rare for us. We don't have a lot of conversations on here, Chris, where we're talking about anything. Well, some of them are outside of Iowa, but most are Iowa-centric, which is still applicable just about everywhere in the U.S. But it's really interesting for me to be part of an organization and a member of something that touches all these areas outside of the United States. Why don't you walk us through that for a little bit? Because I don't think people understand why you and I should care about what goes on in Namibia.
Right. Well, what happens other places carries back to the U.S. What happens other places in the U.S. carries back to Iowa. So hunting is under assault every day. I've got a team. Let's just talk about my team, my advocacy team. So I'm the vice president of government affairs. I actually grew up in Iowa, Northwest Iowa, Storm Lake. So I've got roots in Iowa. So the team that I lead, I've got a state team, which I used to be part of. That's where I first started with SCI. My career has been in conservation and in advocacy. I was the chief attorney for the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks for a couple decades. After I left Iowa, went in the Army, went back to college, then went to law school and stayed in Kansas. And then When I retired from the state, I came in as a state and local liaison, which is basically a government affairs person or a lobbyist. Some people think of us as lobbyists. It's not true lobbying, but I handled the Western U.S. And so I've got a state team of 3 folks right now. There were 2 of us. We've expanded to 3 since I took this role. And then we created a position in the north. So I've got a northeast, a southeast, and a west. Then I've got 2 federal positions in DC that monitor federal legislation. We've got an office in DC called the Hunter's Embassy. It's a building that's about a 10-minute walk off the Senate side. We host lunch and learns. In fact, there's one going on there today for Hill staffers on Teddy Roosevelt and the lessons that he learned and taught that are still applicable today. We're also doing a continuing legal education class there this afternoon. Tomorrow night, we've got a reception for women in conservation. So we do receptions. I'm going in Wednesday. So this is Monday. I'm going in Wednesday. We've got 20 U.S. senators coming to the office doing a fundraiser for a Senate candidate. And then we do what we call hunt clubs, where we bring in a member of Congress and we bring in like-minded folks, and they get to sit around the table and use our office to talk to those senators up close. So that's part of my federal team. I've got an international team. I've got a person in South Africa who's basically a government affairs person. I've got 2 in Europe, watching what goes on in Europe. Got 1 part-time to my team, part of our chapter services, a hybrid in Canada. I've also got a person who takes care of, she fixes problems for members. It's called Hunter Information Service. It's a specialty service for our members only. If they have an issue that they need to resolve, like she helps route it appropriately in our team, or they identify an issue that hunters have that our government affairs team can work on. And then I've got a guide and outfitter liaison. He was in Phoenix over the weekend meeting with a bunch of folks from Mexico and Sonora in particular on creating an outfitter association there. And he heads to New Zealand tomorrow. And then I've got a litigation team. And the SCI is fairly unique in that we're one of the few that has an in-house litigation team where we really can pack a punch. And an example that I can talk about fairly recently was the Florida black bear hunt. There were folks who tried to stop that. SCI intervened on behalf of the state, and we won that lawsuit. So that's my team, and in a nutshell, and we pack a big punch for a small team.
Man, that's a lot of moving parts. I mean, I know that when you and I are immersed in what we do, we understand it. Everybody listening to this out there, whether it's this subject matter or not, knows something that they do or they're part of, and they know it very well. It doesn't matter whether they're a mechanic, a nurse, it doesn't matter what it is. We have these subject matters that we know well, but it's hard for me to grasp that there are this many people all over the earth that you're liaising with, directing, working with to get all these things done. Honest to goodness, this is a legit question. How are you able to keep that all straight? I mean, is this a monumental task, or are you just exceedingly well organized?
So we have a 9:00 Central Time stand up every day where the folks in Africa and Europe can tell us they download about their day because they're at the end of their day. And my folks on the West Coast are just starting their day. And so we all get together and we talk about those issues. And then we do weekly reporting, and we have an advocacy email that comes out on Tuesdays. And so we're a very collaborative, cohesive unit. We work well together. We have to. We're small, even though it seems like we're big. Like I could use more help, clearly, but there's always battles to fight, right? And but that's how we do it. We work together well, and we do those daily touches.
That's unbelievable. Well, that's how you have to do it. IFC uses a live series of chats that all of our people log into, and that's how we keep it up to the moment. We used to try and use phone calls and text messages and emails, but it would become dated instantly. So we needed to have an up to the moment rolling thing in terms of our communication. And I know that it may sound silly to some, but these chats that we use allow us to be able to do the kinds of things you're talking about, Chris. Otherwise, like I said, the information is dated in seconds. When you're working with legislative bodies, especially, things happen very, very quickly. And what you and I knew to be fact at 8:30 in the morning is irrelevant at 8:45 in some cases. And so I'm glad that you guys have organizing principles that work for you, because you got to have them. And I think that that's a testament to organizations that work on behalf of their members and beyond, is having organizing principles in place so they can get work done. Otherwise, you miss the boat.
Right.
Is it okay if I share with you a story and have you comment on it?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I thought, as Joe Blow, local deer hunter, occasionally go out and shoot some birds, whatever else, not having done much else besides that. And even though, as a guy who builds custom rifles for people, I didn't really grasp the idea behind safari and behind going to hunt in other places, other countries, and what kind of impact that makes on their community, on their social structure, on their politics, right down to the way that each person lives, right? I never thought much about that, and I didn't have a frame of reference. And I was talking to a gentleman at the Safari Club Iowa chapter. I think it was the membership meeting a couple years ago. And I said, what's a great and notable story that you've had that you could share with us that happened in recent years? And my daughter and I were sitting there, and he said, well, I'll tell you, I went over to, I don't remember what country it was, but he was hunting Dugga boys. You know, he was wanting to grab a Cape buffalo. And as many of these things go, this had been long, planned. It had taken him a period of time and a lot of effort to get everything lined up so that he could go do these things. He gets over there, and I think it was somebody maybe from the government was dispatched to come find him and his hunt party. And they said, listen, we've got this cat. I don't remember whether it was a tiger or some sort of lion. I don't remember specifically, but a large predatory cat had managed to take a couple of the little local kids, village kids, and obviously they didn't survive. And the concern is this cat's local now. He's hunting. This is likely to continue. So we want you to abandon your hunt that you came into country for, and we want you to come over here and stalk and kill this cat that's killing the locals. And so I said, is that really how this works? And this gentleman said, yes, that's exactly how it worked in this case, and it's not uncommon. I said, well, are you obligated to do that? He said, no, you don't have to do things like that, but you need to. And I said, okay, why do you need to do that? And I was being a little selfish in my question, because I knew that he had spent a great deal of money to get there, organize this hunt, pay outfitters, and do all these things so that he could have this specific animal, right? And he was going to abandon that, whether it took him 2 days to get this cat or 2 weeks. You know what I mean? And he said, well, it's like this. He said, and I hope that I'm not mischaracterizing this in any way, Chris. If I'm wrong about how these things work, I really need you to correct me. But what he told me was, as I recollect, he's like, if the people like me that have the ability and skill to go do these things and the help to go do these things don't, he said, the villagers will eventually take care of it. He said, but they'll do it in ways that don't work well for anyone. I said, okay, like what? And he said, well, they'll wrangle or kill or whatever else the largest animal they could possibly find. In many cases, this might be a lion or something like that. And he said, and they'll poison it. They'll absolutely riddle it with poison. And he said, in an effort to make sure that this cat comes over and feeds on it. So now the cat problem is eliminated because they've poisoned this animal, and they know the cat's going to eventually show up and take his share, right? And I said, okay. He said, well, the problem with it is the cat isn't the only thing eating this massive animal. Everything else in the neighborhood's going to eat it. Now they're going to go get poisoned and wander out there and die. And all the birds are going to come in and feast on them. And the other predators are going to feast on those and die. And the poison trickles down. He said, and you absolutely throw the local ecosystem into a cocked hat or worse. And he said, it's a monumental problem. But he said, that's the only way that they have to for sure take care of the problem. And they're not going to get little kids eaten by cats. So he's like, this is how they handle it if we aren't willing to pitch in. and that absolutely blew my mind. Number one, because it was selfless on his part. And I asked him, I said, well, did you get the cat? He said, yes, I did. I said, and did you go get your Cape Buffalo? He's like, no, I ran out of time. I couldn't go do it. So he gave his time, he gave up and forfeited his hunt to help these people. And I thought that was not only really selfless, but it helped me understand just how important this balance is, that I think that we almost always take for granted. Now, that said, do I have a proper understanding of that story, or what do I need to understand better about that?
Oh, sure. I think that that's a good understanding of the story. So I'm going to Africa Friday, actually, on a hunt with my brother this coming Friday, leave Friday night, and I'm going to do just a quick week and come back. And I've been to Africa. This will be my fourth hunt. So I went last year and the year before that, and then I went back in the early 2000s. And quite honestly, Africa is a great deal for a hunter who wants to do a guided hunt and go experience something. For the price of a guided whitetail hunt in the Midwest, you can go and hunt for 5 days in Africa and hunt 5 big game animals. It's really an incredible value and a deal. But when the animal has value, people will protect it. When it has no value, then they will kill it. And I'll give you an example. My wife and I, we got done hunting and we went and toured. My wife wanted to see Victoria Falls, so we went to Zambia. We went to Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Botswana after we were in South Africa. And so we had a driver who took us to the place that we wanted to go in Botswana, and on the way back, we're coming back in Zambia, and there was a guy riding his bicycle, and he had a bunch of sticks, and that's how they cooked. They would go out and collect these sticks, and they would burn these sticks to cook. And the guy was riding his bicycle, and he said, hey, said something to the driver, and the driver said, do you mind if we go really slow? Because there's a big bull elephant up here on the right that keeps charging and wants to kill this guy on the bicycle. And we're going to shield him because he won't do that to the car, probably. And I was like, of course. Why wouldn't we help?
Probably.
Help our man out, right?
Yeah, okay, all right, go ahead.
And so we drove, and we were doing the same speed as the bicycle. And sure enough, on the right-hand side is a giant bull elephant, and just waiting. And we drove, and there was no conflict with us as the car, but we don't have to live with these animals, these megafauna, right? An elephant or a Cape buffalo or a lion or a leopard. And when those animals have value to the villagers or to the local people, they'll protect them. They'll maybe sustain some crop loss. Like in the example of our driver who was helping us, I was like, "Did you like being a tour guide?" And he's like, "No, I was a farmer, but I couldn't make a living because when the rains would stop, the elephants would come in and eat half of my cabbage crop in one night and destroy my entire living." And in his case, he wished he could have taken care of the problem, but he knows that the value of the elephant for a hunter willing to come in and pay to hunt is much more than the value of the dead elephant in his case.
Yeah.
So again, we don't live with these animals. It's very short-sighted of us to tell people how to manage their wildlife, right?
Well, you and I live in an age and in an area, and most of the people listening to this probably do, where if you get home and you're having a rough day, there's something that you can grab out of the pantry, right? Maybe you'll even have something delivered to your house, or maybe if DoorDash isn't for you, maybe you'll hop in the family truckster and zip down to someplace, a metropolitan area, and go through a drive-through, something, pick up a pizza. I don't care. But I don't think we often think about what it's like to live way out there, where you're pretty darn self-sufficient, and you hear these stories and you're regaled of fantastic hunts, the immersion in local culture, seeing things that you're not used to in a Western culture, and then with especially if the game is of any size at all, sharing it with them. And these people, coming over and absolutely having smiles from ear to ear because they've got something to eat now that they were not going to get before, and how these hunters are able to share their harvest, so to speak, and how much difference it makes for these people, especially, like I say, if the game animal has any size at all. I mean, this is a big deal for some of these villages and some of these areas. It's absolutely huge. And I think we take that for, well, I know we take that for granted because A, we don't think about it, and B, I'm not sure we understand it.
Right. It's certainly easy to go to the grocery store. I hunt. I'm a big hunter, but so mostly my freezer is full of wild game. I occasionally like a good ribeye, like every Saturday night. So I go and cook, I'll get a good ribeye going at my house on Saturday. But the reality is, in rural Africa, protein is scarce. And so what hunters provide to those rural Africans via our hunts and that protein is important.
Well, it's kind of interesting that when we speak about these things, you and I understand our missions really well. We know what we do for others, and we're happy about that, or we wouldn't be doing it. But I always want to ask people like you the question, what's the primary reason, whether it's selfless or selfish, what's the primary reason people should join someplace like SCI? I mean, what are they doing? What are they getting? And what are they giving?
Okay. So primary reason is because whether you believe it or not, I always tease my children, which they live in a little enclave of, safety where we live in Kansas City, on the southwest side of Kansas City. But it's true. In the Midwest, for example, you don't have to deal with, for the most part, anti-hunters, people who want to take away what you do. So, when it comes to me, I'll worry about it. It's here at the door, and I'm here to tell you that as an advocacy person, anti-hunters are everywhere, and they're constantly scheming and trying to figure out ways to shut down hunting. And that's why you should join. A unified voice is 10 times or 100 times or 1,000 times better than an individual. That's why.
Well, I know that you're right about that, and I hope that people out there are listening. If you and I know I'm not saying this to offer some sort of scare tactic, Chris. I mean, I know you know that, but the people listening out there, the people watching, it's true. There are folks who work on this day and night. They're relentless. Some of them are paid by third parties. They're not even actually in it out of passion or out of a personal stake. They just do it because it's popular, and they like running in those circles. I'm not sure what those motivations are all about, but they're still present. But this stuff is going on all the time, and they're vigilant, and they've got nothing to lose. Every time you and I back off the throttle, they're there and they slip in. So we absolutely have to have people that engage with us and that engage for us and on our behalf. And we need membership and support, financial. We need the engagement, all of it. If you don't do that, that's your choice, but plan on some of these things sliding sideways. Here's a good example, and maybe you could clue us in on some of this, because I'm sure that you have a ground floor understanding. But I'm hearing of places in the Pacific Northwest that are putting things forward in their states to eliminate hunting.
Yep, 100%. So, Oregon, Washington, California, probably, if you look at like the West Coast, California is probably the most reasonable state on the West Coast right now when it comes to hunting and the freedom to hunt, which surprises lots of people. Washington, one of the things that I've worked on over the years, spring bear hunt. They closed down their spring bear hunt, not due to science, but the past governor put a bunch of members onto the commission that were anti-hunting, and basically they shut down the spring bear hunt. I listened to many of those commission meetings back when I was the Western State and local liaison for Safari Club, and listened to one of the commissioners say, "Why do I care about killing cougars just so hunters can have more elk to kill?" And it was about the blue mountain elk herd and the fact that the mountain lion population were killing so many elk calves that they didn't have enough reproduction to sustain the herd. So she would rather have the herd blink out than to kill cougars, because she thought that that's because hunters could then kill elk. It's crazy. But IP28 is what you're referring to on the ballot. Yep. So IP28, also something that I worked on. I did legal work. I wasn't on the litigation team, but I helped do some legal work on the ballot language stuff that's actually going before the voters. And so essentially what it would do would be to ban hunting, fishing, trapping, ban animal agriculture, ban trapping a rodent, a mouse in your house. Like, it is crazy level. And when we pointed these things out, like, the proponents doubled down. They need 117,000 signatures to get it on this ballot, 117,000 verified signatures. They came up with about 142 is what they turned in on July 4th, July 3rd, maybe, I think was the day that they had to turn them in. The first count that the Secretary of State's office does, they review 1,000 of them. They did not meet the threshold of 82%. That requires, if you had 142,000, need 117,000, 82% validity rate. They came in lower than that. So now the Secretary of State's doing a second review where they're going to pull 6,000 plus more signatures. They're going to review those for validity. And if they don't make that, then they don't make it on the ballot. If they do, then it goes on the ballot, and we all have to spend a lot of money. I know that initial polling has shown that 82% without any sort of sway on it. You just ask people, 82% oppose it. I know it's going to fail. The proponents have come back and said, we know it's going to fail, but we're just going to keep doing this until it passes. It's crazy town.
So if it makes its way onto the ballot, is there a percentage they need in order to do this?
It's 51%, I think, is what it is.
So they need half of the state that participates plus one person.
Yeah.
That's what this boils down to. And I've got to tell you, that's absolutely scary. Now, not each state is set up so that you can do things by a mob rule, if you will. But the truth of the matter is, that ought to put the fear into everybody listening here. If this is what we're doing and how we're going to, or how we're going to do it, then I think everybody should be listening. Everybody should be paying attention. Everybody should be engaged. Now, you and I believe that. Now, getting them to do that and hoping that they're doing and watching them follow through is another thing altogether. I can only ask for people's engagement. They either will or they won't. But if you don't, there's going to be a hefty price to pay. And getting these things reversed, imagine what it would be like if if a state like Oregon or Washington, somebody does this and they completely outlaw all these things. Think about what that will actually do. I mean, not only will there be all kinds of chaos, but if you do go ahead and do what you know is right by your creator, and you ignore man's law, I'm sure there's going to be a hefty penalty to pay. And I don't mean just in writing a check. I mean, some of you might go to jail. Some of you might lose your right to hunt or own any kind of weapon or even vote. These things are all on the list of punishments when you defy what is a silly order. And when a silly order only got in place because you and I didn't engage and try and stop it on the front end. There's a lot at stake here, Chris.
Yeah, I think that it's important, if it does make it on the ballot, if it makes it through this second round of signature verification by the Secretary of State, that hunters and anglers and just the general populace needs to come out and crush it.
Yeah.
Just tell these people once and for all to go away. They've been working on it for 6 years. 6 years. Yeah. That's crazy. And, that's not the only thing that's going on in where, let's just pick Colorado. Big game, huge big game state, right? Mm-hmm. Huge hunting state. You would think nothing like that's going to happen here. But last year on the ballot, it was IP127, I think is what the number was, right? And it was a ballot measure that would have banned trapping and hunting of mountain lions, bobcats, and lynx. And of course, lynx are federally protected. That was like a red herring in it. There's actually no leg hold traps. That was banned in Colorado in like 1992. No leg hold trapping. So, and you can't really trap I mean, you can, but the average person doesn't have a box trap big enough to catch a mountain lion, right? So, really, it was about hunting of bobcats and mountain lions, and then box trapping of bobcats. And there was also a fur sale ban on the agenda in Denver at the same time, and then a slaughterhouse ban on the agenda on the ballot at the same time for Denver. And those folks again pushed this issue through the initiative petition process, got it onto the ballot, and then the hunting community largely, I think we were aided somewhat by the fur ban, because think about the fur sale ban. You can't sell jigs that have hair in them for fishing. You can't sell a felt hat, a beaver felt hat, a cowboy hat. Like, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah,
you can just keep coming up with ways that people would be restricted, and if you think it doesn't apply to you, just think a little bit and it does, right? But the hunting community then fought back, and then won at the ballot 54 to 45, 54% to 45%, plus a little bit, the little percentages there. So that was 2 years ago, in 2024, and the governor in Colorado has placed avowed anti-hunters on their wildlife commission. Most recently, as of last Thursday or Friday, there was a proposed fur ban in front of the commission. We got that stopped, but they took and limited fur bearer harvest, which was previously unlimited, because there is no harm on those numbers. Like, no science shows that the fur bearer numbers are harmed by trapping, but they limited. They wanted a proposal, so the department put forth a proposal of 15 animals a day. So let's say 15 raccoons or 15 muskrats or whatever the fur bearer is. They were also told to come up with an alternative, so they proposed 8. And then while the commission was debating, one of the commissioners proposed an amendment that took it to 2 animals a day. Like, so you can only trap 2 muskrats, even though the science says it can be unlimited. And we're currently looking at legal options for that now. Actually, one of the things that I learned while I was a state attorney is this thing called arbitrary and capricious behavior and public notice. And you can't have conversations for those commissioners outside of the commission meetings that deal with government business. And so we're looking at our legal options right now on that. But that's Colorado, a pro hunting outdoor recreation state.
That's like saying that you can only use your fly swatter on flies twice a day.
Correct. Essentially, you're right. Yeah.
That is absolutely nutty. And it's coming to a state near you. There are people that we have that are members and life members all over the place. We actually have a ton. You wouldn't think so. We've got a ton of life members in California, and they're listening to this saying, yeah, we know. We fight this stuff all the time. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. But for Iowans listening to this, we're insulated. We don't think there's any problems. IFC does a good job. Our partners, whether it's SCI, whether it's NRA, whether it's GOA, it doesn't make a difference. NSSF, we work together and get work done, right?
Yep.
Well, I've got news for you. They used to say the same thing next door in Illinois, and they used to say the same things next door in Minnesota. And those places are radically different now than they were a few years ago. Radically different. I mean, if you talk with Joe Blow, rural Iowan, they don't differentiate their corn ground from southern Illinois. It looks the same. If you talk to a cattleman, they do direct competition in Iowa next door with Nebraska. Everything's the same, with the exception of the politics is different from place to place. And if we, I'm telling you, if we aren't engaged, we back off the throttle, we're going to have real problems. We're keeping real problems at bay at any given moment.
So the constitutional right to hunt, fish, and trap in Kansas, it was something that I worked on for about 16 years from the time that I started, and I changed my thought philosophy on it. And I don't know that it's the end all be all saving grace of things. Like if you, like you said, on those Western states, the initiative petition process, or any state that has an initiative petition process, things can run away from you real quick. There are ways. Utah passed Prop 5 in 1999, which requires a 66% threshold to make any sort of constitutional change related to wildlife. I think that that's a great way to go. But when it came to the constitutional right to hunt, fish, and trapping in Kansas, one of the things that I got up, and it was towards the very end, and one of the legislators said, "Why do you think we need this? We're in Kansas." And they were opposing putting it on the ballot. And that's the process in Kansas. You have to go through the legislature. The legislature has to, 66% of the legislature, or 2/3 of the legislature has to put it on the ballot. And then goes to the voters at a general election, or the primary in August, which is just coming up in a couple weeks for us. Normally, though, on this one, you put it on like the general, trying to get people out to vote. And why do you think you need this? Well, you might not need it today or tomorrow, but I guarantee you're going to need it sometime down the road. And I can't tell you when that time is. Yeah. Can't tell you that, but it's going to happen, and it's going to happen so fast that you don't know it. It's much like my son is leaving for South Carolina next month to go to college. And I remember just yesterday he was born, and now he's 18 and heading off into the world. That's the kind of transition that occurs with the antis, and when you think you're going to need something, just happens.
Yeah. While you were talking, I pulled up on another screen that I've got here, a short list. Now, I'm not going to read them all off. It'll become boring. And it shouldn't be boring. It should be scary. But here's a short list. In just the state of Iowa, in just the legislature, just that IFC had a touch on or wholesale defeated by themselves. A ban on semi-automatic weapons, universal background checks, magazine bans, rolling back shall issue to discriminatory may issue standards for carry permits, a bill prohibiting the manufacture, possession, shipment, or transportation of any kind of trigger device, extreme risk protective orders, imposing civil liability on parents or guardians when minors cause injuries. What do we got here? Ban on capital carry, ban on semi-autos, ban on triggers, ban. You go right down the list, and here's a lead ban. That's ones some of the hunters don't even understand that I talk to. Well, what's the big deal with the lead ban? I'm like, do you have any idea what a lead ban will do? First of all, it's based on junk. And it's almost always conjecture and lies that I hear offered in front of the legislative body or in front of people for this. But do you understand what a lead ban will actually do to you in terms of hunting, firearm ownership, firearms use? I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable, but people don't think about that. And I don't think that they're that educated on it. And I think that that's one of the reasons I like being part of SCI. These things are spelled out, and you have resources to ask about them so you can better understand the issue. But these things are out there all the time. They're waiting for us to screw up, is what I should say. They're waiting for us to screw up because they're not waiting on us. They're very aggressive with their agenda. They'll always find somebody, a gaggle of people, to sponsor these bills and run them and garnish support for them. The question is can we step up and get in front of them as often as we should? Well, usually we do, but that requires help.
Right. Grassroots support is super important when you're doing advocacy work, as you know. And that's why we have our chapter network. We have an action alert system. That's why I said we have 100,000 advocates, because I've got 100,000 people in that action alert system. So go and sign up for it. Like, it's free to sign up. You don't have to be a member to do it. I'd prefer you be a member. But if you're willing to stand up when we say we need help, I'll take you, right?
Yeah.
Agreed. Lead bans. Let's talk briefly about lead bans. Europe,
please.
Last week, So it's been in the works for a long time. Finally, they came out with the final version of it, but there was a proposed lead ban for all bullets and shot. And ultimately, what it ended up with in Europe was a ban on lead shot phased in over the next 3 years, or no, I'm sorry, over the next 7 years. And it was 18 months. So I consider that a victory, like when you can delay that out. And then lead bullets are off the table now. It's not part of the proposed ban. You know, Washington, D.C., luckily we've got an administration that's favorable currently to hunting. I've got a friend, his name's Brian Nesvik. He and I have been in the conservation world a long time. He's the director of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. Doug Burgum put out an order preventing lead bans arbitrarily. Like, if there's science that shows that their lead is having a population level impact on a species, SCI will support the science. But that doesn't exist. It certainly doesn't exist on anything right now, other than maybe condors and waterfowl, right? There's a bill, Representative Whitman in Congress put out a bill. It basically says just that. If there's no science, the federal government can't ban lead bullets or shot without the science.
Well, that's very important stuff. I had a gentleman walk in my shop, and he had, I don't remember what it, honestly, I don't remember what it was, some sort of break action shotgun, and it was old as the hills, but it's still functional. It was very good, but you can imagine something that's leaned up against the door for, either in his granddaddy's house, his house, or granddaddy's, his dad's house, or his house. It gets worn over time and it doesn't look like much. And so he's like, I want this thing refurbished. My granddaddy used this and taught his dad or his son. My dad taught me. I want to teach my kids. I'm like, okay, fine. We can get this thing refurbished. It'll look like new. And I'll double check everything, but I'm sure it'll probably be functionally sound and safe. And so we were visiting about it when he came to pick the thing up. And he's like, well, I'm for this lead ban. And he's like, he says, I suppose I'll just start buying, I can't remember what it was, tungsten or something else to run in this gun. And I'm like, well, first of all, the lead ban's silly. I said, it's not based on any kind of truth. But I said, oh, by the way, I said, you couldn't run tungsten or steel shot in this gun. He's like, why not? I said, well, it's likely to be damaged. And I said, it could hurt you. I said, you absolutely can't run anything like that in this gun. It's sufficient for soft, malleable pellets only. So that's lead. Unless you could find me something else that's going to work for that. I said, that's great. But I said, I'm not aware of anything. And he's like, you're kidding. I'm like, no, I'm not kidding. This gun's, 85 years old or 90 years old. You can't use modern ammunition, so to speak, modern shot if for that. This is lead only. And he's like, well, I don't like that. I said, well, that's just the truth. That's what you got, buddy. This is all you get. And I said, so good luck banning lead. I said, you're going to ban yourself right out of hunting. And I said, and oh, by the way, again, keep in mind, this lead ban that you're talking about and the benefits of banning lead aren't true in the way that you've been told or in the way that you're purporting. So sometimes this is not only about engagement, Chris, as you know, it's a great deal about education, because there are incoherent or inconsistent things that the community, especially the hunting community, sometimes believes. And I'm tickled that SCI is putting forth these things to say, oh, by the way, here's what happens to be true of this subject matter. Go read this blog, whatever else, and you guys have a list of those, which I thought was pretty cool. You've got a section right there with a whole bunch of women representing hunters. I thought that was pretty cool. My daughter doesn't recognize things like that. She's not old enough yet. I think she just turned 17, and so she's starting to pay more attention to that. But she doesn't recognize it as an issue, that whether she sees a whole bunch of male hunters or female or a mix, she isn't paying attention to that. I do, because I want to see more women out in hunting and out in the areas of conservation and the practice. So I was really tickled to see that. But I guess I strayed there a little bit. We were talking about lead, but the truth of the matter is, I'm glad that you guys are doing what you're doing, because it does make a difference and we need it.
Right. Absolutely need it. You know, on those topic of the gun legislation and the things that you guys worked on,
Yeah.
you know, SCI works on gun legislation a lot too. And
Yeah.
primarily where it focuses on the impacts to hunters, like concealed carry, not necessarily. However, if concealed carry was preventing you, if there was a you know, an archery season that I'll give, this is an example from Kansas when I did my work in the legislature in Kansas for the agency. We had a prohibition on no firearms, and this is during an archery season, archery only season.
Mm-hmm.
And there were, you know, I think it's largely unfounded concern that somebody who's an archer would then use a pistol to then shoot a deer.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's very realistic. Somebody who's out there archery hunting is wanting to archery hunt, but they also have a right to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And so they could carry concealed. So we ultimately had to go to the legislature and get a bill passed that allowed folks to carry concealed while they were archery hunting.
Yeah.
Make sure it was perfectly legal. Once concealed carry had passed in Kansas. So for the most part, though, like I focus on firearms legislation that impacts hunters. Semi-auto bans. What about duck hunters that need semi-autos? It's not just about black guns, although people use a lot of AR platforms to hunt. I mean, I certainly have several AR platforms, and I certainly hunt with them too. So we sometimes get engaged in those issues. If it, you know, the anti-gun playbook, similar to the anti-hunting playbook, you see the same repetitious things from state to state. We're going to do an excise tax on guns and ammunition, and so we'll fight those things like that. So SCI is certainly engaged in the firearms arena as well. And in fact, two of my state and local liaisons used to work at the NRA. So that tells you the overlap that we all have.
Oh, there is a lot of overlap. And that same archery and bow hunting scenario, while you're carrying some sort of self-defense weapon, was something that it took a while to get the Iowa legislature to come alongside, because there were a lot of people out there saying, even legislators, even I think it was Iowa's DNR. I hold them in pretty low regard, by the way, but and I make no secret about that. I think that they actually stood up there, if I remember right, and said, well, if you're going to have a firearm with you, somebody has a self-protection or defense sidearm, they're just going to sit up there and shoot the deer as they walk underneath them in the stand. I'm like, well, that's not legal. Well, we know, but if we ban this, then it won't happen. I'm like, well, first of all, that's silly. That's not how bans work. That's not how human nature works. And number two, I said, you're saying that anybody who carries a weapon for self-defense while they're bow hunting is a poacher. No, we're not. I said, yes, you are. You're banning it so that can't happen on the premise that it will. And I said, on the premise, and I said, and this is also illegal already. I said, so what you're saying is I'm guilty of a thought crime, even if I haven't thought it. I said, do you guys understand how asinine and silly this is? This is as dumb as it is stupid. So, you know, we're going to have to come up with a better way of treating one another than for you to say, well, you could do this, even though we know that statistics and numbers don't bear that out. But because you could, we're going to go ahead and ban it. I'm like, that's nutty. That's absolutely nutty. But those things go on all the time. And sometimes really well-intentioned, I'm so sure you've seen this a lot, but really well-intentioned, well-thought-out legislators get a faulty idea stuck in their head. And you got to sit down and visit with them and say, listen, I respect the fact that you think this, but let's talk about it and let's see if it's borne out when we actually walk it through. And a lot of times you'll come away from those conversations with people saying, oh man, okay, yeah, I think I understand now. And I'm like, well, that's what we were looking for. That's what SCI is looking for. That's what IFC is looking for. We're looking for a little time to have a one-on-one and an earnest, genuine conversation to see if you think, or these things that you think are true actually are true. I'm not trying to manipulate you. All I have is data and an opinion to offer you, a perspective and some context. But if you'll give me that time, I think you'll come away better educated, and hopefully you'll reconsider your position. And sometimes that's all it takes, as you know. But you've got to have people out there offering those conversations, and then membership engaged, backing it up.
Yep. So on the advocacy side, what can you do to help? One of the things that I always try to, when I'm out talking to folks and preach, is like, join SCI if you're not a member already, respond to those action alerts, go and have conversations with your legislators and elected officials regularly. And what does that mean? It's not, don't just go and be antagonistic or adversarial the first time. Like, build that relationship and cultivate it. So when you go to them, when you have an issue to talk about, they already know you and you have a level of rapport or respect there already. Like, when you show up at the legislature or at the Wildlife Commission and your first conversation is adversarial, it has already set a tone. You should have been talking to those folks, like, pick up the phone and call your representative and your your senator right now, or your member of the Wildlife Commission who represents you, or all of them, and talk to them and just introduce yourself. And that way, the next time, it's not so adversarial. It's a conversation, right? I think that that's a key consideration in what you just talked about.
Yeah, without a doubt. When IFC is present with a legislator, let's say that it's a House rep and a senator at one of their Saturday morning coffees, we're really good if IFC people leadership are there, introducing the local IFC members to those senators and House reps and saying, listen, this is Joe Main Street. He has a concern about this. We share it. Can you talk with him? And then we put those people together and let them begin forming their relationship so that it matters. Now, those advocates, our IFC members, are less hesitant to address them in the future because they've been given an intro and there's some comfort level there, right? And that works both ways. Legislators don't want to be approached and dressed down. They don't want to be cussed at. They don't want to be torn to shreds. Now, they may need all those things, but that's really not how a functioning society operates. All right. So sometimes they need to be introduced so that they can have avoid a reaction, and they can have that conversation that needs to be had in, I don't know, Chris, maybe what you and I would call a palatable way, right? Okay. Even if there are stark contrasts in the position of the legislator and the constituent, they've got to be able to have a conversation and exchange ideas, right? And I think that that's what places like IFC and SCI, many others, are exceedingly good at. The question is will people show up at the Saturday morning coffees, and will they come to IFC's Second Amendment Day at the Capitol and all that kind of stuff? Oh, by the way, I should mention that real quickly. If SCI hasn't been part of that, and I don't know if you have been in the past, next March on the 16th, so it's 3/16/2027. IFC's already got our 2A day booked. Nick Freitas is going to be our speaker. He's going to be there during the day, no cost for any of this stuff. And then that night, we're going to have a ticketed event for our IFC PAC, and Nick is going to give us a more intimate conversation. But I want to make sure that SCI is included in that. If you'd like to be part of that or have anybody there for that, Chris, we'll make sure that everybody knows about that. You can put that out to your members. We'll do that. We want you included. And that segues nicely into the people listening out there. We want you to go to IFC's website, because this program, IFC's Warrior Wednesday, is done in large part with our trusted partners. Most of those are offering you tangible goods or discounts or whatever else as IFC members as value added. But it actually makes this work. So we want you to use the people that support you. But back to what we were talking about here, I found a little opportunity to work that in, Chris. I hope that sure. Doesn't throw you off. But that advocacy makes a difference. Again, if you want to be part of IFC's 2A Day, I think this might be our 10th year. Let me know when we get done with this recording, Chris, and I'll make sure that SCI is included. But anyway, go ahead with what we were talking about.
Yeah, I think, when you look at what you can do as a hunter or an advocate, we talked about join organizations that you believe in. I'm a life member of the NRA as well, and I'm a disabled American veteran, right? I was in the service, went to Iraq, and So I became a life member of DAV, and I'm a life member of SCI. I've been a life member of SCI for a long time. I was actually at the Kansas State Rifle Association annual meeting this weekend. They have a legislative forum, and then they have a gubernatorial candidate forum. So the people running for the governor got to stand up and speak. So I went because I want to be engaged, and I also don't want my first conversation with those folks to be adversarial. So I went and met a few folks that I didn't know. I knew most of them running for governor, and but I decided this weekend that I should do a life membership in the KSRA as well, upgrade my membership. So join those organizations that you believe in, respond to those action alerts from those organizations. If it's from SCI, we call it that hack, respond. Go out and meet those folks. Do just exactly what I just told you to do. Go and meet them before you have to contact them on an issue. And then in the case of SCI, we do those various membership levels that are showing up on your screen right now, but we have other specialty things, like we have a PAC and a super PAC and we call it the CCLE, which is a way to donate to legal education. So our PAC and our super PAC, the difference between a PAC and a super PAC, you have to be a member of SCI to donate to our PAC, and we have individual donation limits that are set by the federal government. Ours is a federal PAC, and you can donate up to $5,000 a year, and we can give $5,000 a year to a federal candidate. And then our super PAC, we call it the Hunter Action Fund. You don't have to be a member for that to donate to that. And then we cannot donate directly to a candidate, but we can run ads in favor of a candidate or bumper stickers or things like that. And then we've got the CCLE, which is our legal education fund, which is a 501c3, which we can do those. We raise money out of that to do like lunch and learns. That's what helps pay for those lunch and learns, on the Hill for Capitol Hill staffers or things like that. And we can use that for legal litigation funding. So there are other ways to contribute once you become a member of those organizations, and I just went through those. You did talk about 2A Day at the Capitol. SCI does a big fly-in in the United States Capitol every May.
Cool.
We usually hit about 200 offices on the Hill. This year we were over a little 150. Had a little snafu with this year. Like the week before we were supposed to have our fly-in, Congress decided they were going to take a break and save that week, and so we met with a bunch of staffers. I'm here to tell you, meeting with staffers is just as important as meeting with the actual members.
Oh yeah.
Those are the people that are advising those members of Congress. They're the subject matter experts. They have a portfolio that they cover. And so you meet with the natural resources portfolio person or the firearms portfolio person. And then when a bill comes up, the member, if they aren't engaged on those issues, they go to that staffer and they say, tell me about this issue. And it also allows for a connection to be made between the organization and those staffers. And a good example of how this translates into action. So one of the things that SCI has been working on for several years is the Equal Access to Justice Act. EJA allows folks to sue the government and take on the government and get attorney's fees. And that's important in the case of, somebody filing a veterans claim or a Social Security Administration claim. Like the money's not enough to get an attorney to help you unless they can get attorney's fees, right? Because the recovery is small, usually in those amounts. It's not like millions and millions and millions of dollars cases. But the anti-hunting forces have realized that they can sue under EJA and settle with the federal government for exorbitant attorney's fees if they are a nonprofit 501c3. And so we're trying to reform EJA and exempt out the veterans claims and the Social Security Administration claims, but get to the heart of the matter. When you've got a Humane World, which is formerly HSUS, worth hundreds of millions of dollars suing and settling, what they've become is an environmental law firm. And none of that money is going to the mission to save wildlife or help endangered wildlife as they purport. They sue repeatedly on wolves and grizzly bear delisting and those megafauna that they can generate money off of. So they fundraise over here and then sue and settle over here for procedural violations alleged under the Endangered Species Act. So we're trying to reform EJA. So what we did was we did a lunch and learn on EJA, invited those Hill staffers, and that lunch and learn process, in addition to our conversations with those offices, led to the creation of 2 bills in Congress currently that would do some reform on EJA. Super important. So go to those lobby days and those fly-in days. That was some of the things that we had people talk about. So when people come in for those lobby days, we set out our top priorities on a piece of paper. We have a little briefing in the morning. We provide breakfast. We set up all those meetings throughout the day, and then encourage them to pop into other offices if they can. And so, and then they talk about those topics, and EJA was one.
Well, as a person who's a lifelong salesman, one way or the other, it's been my experience, and I think that any good salesperson would tell you this. When you encounter somebody that's a decision maker, that's great, and a legislator would qualify for that, right? But there are a number, if not a series, of gatekeepers before then, and that's often the staff. The staff absolutely needs to understand your issue, just like the legislator does, because at the end of the day, as you said, he or she is going to turn to the staff and say, okay, I've listened to some of these complaints. I've listened to some of these, some of this context. Where are we at on this? And they'll get backfilled gaps in the information or context or preferences. That absolutely means that we have to educate the staff along with the legislator. I don't think very many people grasp it like that. We are duty bound. You out there listening are duty bound to talk with these people, all of them, so that they understand what's going on in proper context and relay over your stories and your preferences. If you don't do that, you're absolutely leaving it to chance. It's a bigger deal than what people may realize. And if you think about it, that's how it works. If you're sitting out there as a pastor and you offer your sermon let's say that their mom and dad are both sitting there, and you listen to it and you assume dad's going to take it home and it's all going to be good. Well, that can often work, but mom needs to hear it. The kids need to hear it, and vice versa. You know what I mean? Everybody that's involved there needs to hear it from the horse's mouth, and that's usually best. We don't always do that, and we don't always understand that, but that is the truth.
Some of those staffers end up being the member of Congress or the legislator themselves too. Mm-hmm. And you can't discount that. You're laying a foundation. Like, I look at it kind of like interns. Like, you want to have a bunch of interns, and ultimately they go out and create their own great thing, but they're still tied back to us in some certain way, right? And so when you go and educate those staffers, and then they go on and do something else, they might switch offices, they might become the member themselves, and that super benefits you because you laid that foundation and that relationship early on.
Yep, I agree 100%. Is it okay if I bust you on something that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago when we were setting this up?
Sure.
Chris and I don't know each other that well. We're forming our relationship on the fly here. So I appreciate the fact that he was like, yeah, I haven't been ambushed yet. Let's see what this guy's got to say. When you and I were talking, you told me, I hope I'm not getting you in trouble, but you told me that you have structured your life successfully at this point so that you're able to fish every single day. Is that a true statement?
It's not 100% true because I don't get to fish every day, but I'm on day, yesterday was 110 for the year. So out of 180, 190 days so far, or whatever the number is, it's a pretty good number. I usually fish about, over the last 8 years, I've fished over 200 days a year. Easy. I keep a log because I'm crazy about my detailed notes and where I go and who I fish with. And it all started when I would take my kids when they were younger. And, now I've got 3 in high school and 1 heading to college. But when they were younger, it required me to be an unpaid Uber driver. And so I would take them to practice, and I would drop off, and I would fish. I would find a public place to fish close by for an hour, and then I'd go pick them back up. And so I've continued that on. Last night I ran over and fished. It's getting real hot. I think today is supposed to be 102 by noon. And so that's going to be a little difficult. But and when it gets that warm, those fish don't want to come into the shore. But it's been real good fishing. I chase big little fish primarily. I fish with 2-pound test and 64th ounce jigs, and I usually catch about 2,500 fish a year, and I try to catch my holy grails, an 11-inch bluegill or a 10-inch bluegill. 11, I'm just over exaggerating at that point, but a 10-inch bluegill would be like a 200-inch whitetail for me.
Yeah.
And I hunt, obviously, too, but yeah.
Well, it's good for us it's good for this. I guess what I'm thinking while you're saying that is, think about how we need to be engaged on our state levels with ground that is made available as a state resource to everyone who's there to use it. Because what you're talking about is an impossibility if there isn't public land and public resource available to hunt on and to fish on. Because the minute that we don't pay attention to that anymore, then these county and city and state lakes, whatever it is they are, these streams, they evaporate, not physically, but metaphorically. Our access evaporates, and it's the same as if they weren't there. And so, if we're not paying attention to how that stuff is being managed, who is doing what with it, and what access they're offering to the taxpayers who support all that, that ability to go out and drop a line in the water 200 days out of the year as an average, that is gone.
Right. That would kill me if I couldn't do that, honestly. I usually, that's how I get my Zen on every night, get a little bit of relaxation in. Usually my day starts about 6 o'clock. I get up and I read my email that's coming overnight. We've got an international team, so I'm getting texts or whatever, and my phone's on silent, and then I usually try to do a little walk right away, just get things going. Got to get kids up and moving, that type of stuff. And usually I shut down around 6 or 7 at night, and I'm on the road about 15 days a month. And so I take a rod sometimes when I go on the road, if I know I can find a good public place where I'm going to be. Some people would take golf clubs. I take a travel rod in my suitcase and just try to get out and get that little last 30 minutes of the night Zen on, just a little bit of relaxation. Don't have to fish for very long. Just catch a few fish and be happy.
What's your favorite rod and reel combo?
Right now I'm using a Shimano Stratic, and it's like the smallest one, I think it's called the 1,000, and then a St. Croix 5-foot super ultralight rod.
I think I talked to my buddy Elliot Farrow at Farrow's Lead Farm about something similar to this. I think it was less than a week ago. He's running out and he's fishing with these kids. He's like, it's been hot. It hasn't been very successful, but he said, and I said, what are you fishing for? He's like, I don't care, whatever. He's like, he says, I had the most fun in an Iowa area fishing with some sort of ultralight pole and pole and reel combo. And he said, and I go out there, and he said, you know how it is. You can catch a little bit of anything in an Iowa climate with an ultralight setup. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with you. I think I've had the most fun doing that myself. Now, I will admit freely, that's not how I was raised. When I was a pup, I spent a lot of time with my uncles on the 102 River. And it was, Zebco 33s, and you were trying to catch catfish and other things like that. But that said, I think that's probably a great way to do it. Now, my son's dexterity is crap. So when I had him in, he kind of open face reel. He looks at me like I'm silly. I'm like, dude, you just got to use it a little bit and you'll enjoy it. I promise it'll become very easy. Now, that's just the way it is. But I can see doing a lot of that. I don't get to do a lot of that as I wish that I should or could. But I'll admit freely, when I do get around to going out there, what you're describing sounds like a lot of fun. It really, really is.
It is. Sometimes towards the end of the year when I say something like, I got to go fish, my wife's like, do you got to go fish? Is it fun or are you just a little obsessed? And I'm like, well, there's a little bit of both.
Whatever,
So,
whatever.
right.
You married me. You knew this. You knew what you were getting into. Yeah. All
I
right.
got
Well,
some I got some catfish rods out there the other night, and my daughter and I are going to go tonight. So there's this one lake that's not too far from our house, that's over by the school that she went to, and we caught probably 300 cats there one summer. It's probably got more pounds of catfish per acre, per surface acre than any place else in the state because the state stocks it. So we'll go catch some cats tonight.
yeah. Fantastic. All right. So she's a participant in this madness. Is that what you're saying?
She is, yeah.
All right.
Not every day, but she is.
All
She
right.
said she'd go with me tonight.
It sounds as if you chose wisely. Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time today. I've enjoyed this conversation. Chris Tymeson with the Safari Club International. And again, you can navigate to that by putting Safari and Club in your internet browser, and you'll land there. We want you people to go check them out. I'm encouraging your membership. IFC and SCI are partnered in no official way, but we have worked together, and I know many of the local members, and they've become friends, and I enjoy visiting with them. And some of the people that are working in the Iowa chapter are absolutely fantastic folks, and I've enjoyed the heck out of them. I would encourage you guys to go do this. I mean, yes, IFC advocates on behalf of hunters, and there are many things that we touch on in the legislature, but there are subject matter experts that we absolutely need to be partnered with and rely on. And Safari Club, NRA, some of these others are part of that. So we want you to do that. Chris, is there anything else that we should be talking about before I let you go?
I think we've covered quite a bit of ground. I'd be happy to come back on sometime and talk about some other stuff.
Yeah, now that you say that, I'm thinking ahead. There are 3 basic recordings that we do here. We're doing a Warrior Wednesday now, which is the long form podcast, right? And then we do some short stuff like Candidate Files, where we bring legislators on. We ask them questions about our key legislative issues, and we let everybody answer, and then we turn the program over to them so they can put the word out about themselves, right? But there's a spot in between that we call IFC specials, and they're for up to the moment stuff where we can record on the fly about something coming down. Maybe we should be planning that kind of thing. If Safari Club has things that you need to get out there, and we could help be a force multiplier for that, that's as simple as calling me up, and we'll see if we can get something scheduled on the fly, and we'll help get the word out there. And I want to make sure that you know about that, and that your members know about that.
Appreciate that very much.
All right. Chris Tymeson from Safari Club International. We appreciate his time today, and become a member. It's worth doing. I wouldn't tell you to do it if I didn't believe in it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael.